right, good morning and welcome to The Scoop, NANP's monthly Hot Topics educational webinar series. I'm Shannon Montoya, and I'd like to first remind you of just a couple things before we get started. These calls are recorded to listen to again at your availability on the nanp.org website. Today's webinar will conclude with a question and answer session, so please feel free to type your questions in throughout the webinar so we can get to as many as possible. Today, our guest presenter is naturopathic Dr. Michael Murray. Dr. Murray is one of the world's leading authorities on natural medicine. He's published over 30 books featuring natural approaches to health. He's a graduate, former faculty member, and serves on the board of Regents of Bastyr University in Seattle, Washington. For the past 35 years, Dr. Murray has been compiling a massive database of original scientific studies from medical and scientific literature, which provides strong evidence and the effectiveness of diet, vitamins, minerals, herbs, and other measures in the maintenance of health and the treatment of disease. Dr. Murray was a keynote speaker at NANP's 2018 conference, and today he is here to present on a non-cannabis nutritional approach to impacting the endocannabinoid system. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Murray.
Oh, it's my pleasure. This is a fun topic, and I hope everybody's excited to get into this. It seems like everybody's on CBD right now, and there's just a kind of a massive hysteria about the possibility of not only CBD but other cannabinoids. My goal today is to present some provocative concepts towards the goal of better clinical outcomes. Some of the things that I'll be saying are probably a bit of a heresy to what others may be proclaiming out there. But I always like to speak from truth, and truth can be somewhat of a moving target here in the nutritional field because things change. Our understanding and research comes out that challenges that understanding is a constant. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to give you a kind of an up-to-date view as to my take on what we can do to effectively support this endocannabinoid system beyond just giving people phytocannabinoids or CBD. So I'll provide a quick overview of what is the endocannabinoid system and introduce some key concepts of nutritional support, and then provide an accurate appraisal of the role of CBD as a therapeutic agent, and introduce some alternative compounds that impact the endocannabinoid system. And we'll have plenty of time for question and answer, because my goal is I'd like to get through this main presentation in 30 to 40 minutes to give us ample time to answer any questions that you may have. So with that in mind, let's talk about what is this endocannabinoid system. It was a surprise discovery of an unknown regulatory system that occurred in 1988. It was discovered by Dr. Raphael Mechoulam while tracing the metabolic pathway of THC, which is the active psychoactive compound in marijuana. The key point to always remember when we're talking about the endocannabinoid system is that this is a system that exists in all animals except insects, and it predates the cannabis plant. It existed well before cannabis was ever on this planet. So it was given the name the endocannabinoid system in honor of THC and the role that it played. But this is something that is critical to our overall health, and it's influenced by a lot of other factors, important factors beyond cannabinoids. It's a receptor-like system similar to how neurotransmitters work in our body, and it plays a central role in homeostasis, and that affects everything. What we learn in Biology 101 is that any organism, whether it's a single cell amoeba or a more complex human, it all comes down to providing a constant internal environment through the process of homeostasis. And think of this endocannabinoid system as a mechanism by which the body kind of keeps that thermostat, that homeostasis in check. Homeostasis is the maintenance of relatively stable conditions within the body's internal environment. This is critical to the function of every single cell throughout the body. So hence, our endocannabinoid system plays a huge role in the function of every single cell throughout our entire body. It mediates systemic health. It regulates many factors of behavior. It's critical to the functioning of every tissue, every cell in the body, particularly the nervous system, the immune system. But it also impacts blood vessels. It impacts our hormonal system. It works on digestion, and it is definitely a key factor in regulating pain, motivation, reward, appetite, inflammation, thermoregulation, eye ocular pressure, muscle control, sensation, energy, metabolism, mood, and our stress response. So this is an exploding area of research, and I'm going to give you kind of a snapshot of what that research indicates. We can simplify the endocannabinoid system as being composed of two major receptor sites, CB1 and CB2. And loosely, we describe CB1 as being the kind of the psychoactive, responsive receptor. THC binds to that. And we refer to CB2s more for non-psychoactive aspects. So activation of the endocannabinoid system occurs by binding of these CB1 and CB2 receptors. Here's an important fact. There are endogenous ligands that bind to these receptors. So these receptors were not developed because the creator wanted receptors in our body that would respond to cannabis. These receptors were developed so that the body could keep that homeostasis by responding to compounds that we naturally produce. So really, support of the endocannabinoid system begins with nutrition and with lifestyle and with other factors that influence our own production of these endogenous ligands. And we're going to talk about what those are. But just keep that in mind as we move forward here. So if we look at some of the activators of this system, we focus on this right now, these phytocannabinoids, mainly from cannabis. But there are other plants that have cannabinoids that they're not from cannabis, that chemically they're referred to as cannabinoids because they're able to bind to these receptors, and they're able to produce better binding and better effects on, especially on CB2 receptors than CBD. Endocannabinoids. Endo means within. These are compounds produced within our body, and they're largely derived from fatty substances. So we'll talk about what some of these endogenous ligands are. We also have cannabinoid. These are compounds that mimic cannabinoid compounds, and they'll either bind to receptors or they'll produce the kind of the end result. And we'll look at the biochemistry of what happens when you bind to a CB receptor, and you'll see that. Then you have what are referred to as para-activators. These are compounds that work on peripheral endocannabinoid system mechanisms, systems that don't involve the binding to receptors, but are very much still a part of the endocannabinoid system. So we know that there are a number of factors that support the endocannabinoid system. Basically, getting the right types of fat in the diet. We're going to talk about what those are. Herbs and spices. Herbs and spices are a rich source of these phytocannabinoids, particularly the volatile herbs and spices, these volatile compounds, beta-carotene especially. Very potent CB2 receptor agonists, so very useful. Stress is closely tied to the endocannabinoid system. When you're under stress, your endocannabinoid system can become weakened and depleted. So anything that promotes improved tolerance to stress is something that tends to promote a healthier endocannabinoid system. There are a number of dietary supplements and botanical extracts that impact the endocannabinoid system. And then hot and cold therapy seems to be effective in kind of toning the endocannabinoid system. So hydrotherapy is a very useful way to enhance homeostasis and enhance the endocannabinoid system. Once activated, it leads to an intricate cascade of neurotransmitters that communicate vital information to our cells, tissue, organs, and glands. It's basically a master communication network. So in addition to promoting homeostasis, think about the endocannabinoid system as a kind of like an antenna that enhances the transmission of vital information from one cell to another throughout the entire body. That's really important. The ability to communicate on a cellular basis is critical to our overall health. There's been a focus on a clinical condition called the endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome. It's a condition in which the endocannabinoid system is compromised due to poor nutrition or prolonged exposure to stress or disease. You can see some of the causal factors, and it's a key factor in some fairly common clinical entities: chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, migraines, irritable bowel syndrome, and seizure disorders. We've got a lot of data on the benefits of supporting the endocannabinoid system with CBD primarily in helping with some seizure disorders. I'm going to dial into that research in just a minute. What I want to stress here is that nutritional support is critical to the endocannabinoid system. And it breaks down really in very simple terms. In general, what you think is healthy for the body is healthy for the endocannabinoid system. Proper nutritional support is required for this endocannabinoid system to work effectively, particularly getting the right types of fat, getting the omega-3 fatty acids, the monounsaturated fats, and not an overabundance, but sufficient levels of the omega-6 fatty acids. Internally, these fatty substances are critical to the health of the endocannabinoid system and play a huge role in producing those endogenous ligands. So when we talk about endocannabinoids, we're talking about compounds that bind to these receptors. The first one here is anandamide, AEA. This compound was originally known as the bliss molecule. Yes, it produces bliss. And it binds to these cannabinoid receptors, and it is a really key one. At first, it was thought to be the key endocannabinoid, but now 2-AG has kind of replaced it. I also want to touch on PEA and OEA. I think these will become huge therapeutic nutritional supplements here in the very near future. They're just starting to enter the marketplace, and I think it's the promise that these compounds play in reducing pain and promoting weight loss and influencing the endocannabinoid system. I think it's extreme. I think they are the real answer that people are looking for when they're taking CBD. The endocannabinoids have some unique physical and mechanical effects. They're hydrophobic. They promote local cell signaling, and they cause what's referred to as retrograde transmission. So it's not the path of the feedback is up. It's not downstream, and this is really important as an aspect of why this endocannabinoid system works in pain and why it's so critical to the functioning of our nervous system. These compounds, these endogenous CB receptor ligands, they're produced on demand. They're not stored. They have a very short half-life, and degradation by fatty acid amide hydrolase, FAAH, that has been a key target. There was actually a drug that was being developed for enhancing endocannabinoid activity. It worked on blocking this enzyme. The idea is that, hey, if you block FAAH, you're going to have more of the endogenous ligands floating around, so you're going to potentiate all the effects of our own endocannabinoids. But unfortunately, even though animal studies showed that this therapy was safe, when they got to human clinicals, it produced severe morbidity. They gave it to 6 people. All 6 people wound up in the intensive care, and there was 1 death. So that compound never had any more research done on it, obviously. But there are natural compounds that impact this FAAH that we know are safe. And so I'll talk a little bit about those. So on the right here, you see some illustration that's showing you some actions of these endogenous endocannabinoids. And as I said, they do travel up. By binding to the CB1 on intracellular organelles and other targets, it produces a kind of a downstream effect on some really important regulatory compounds, PPARs, GPRs, and TRPs. And I'll explain those very, very shortly. I want to do so by talking about PEA. I mentioned it earlier, palmitoyl ethanolamide, PEA. This has more research on it than CBD. There's no clinical study showing CBD has any effect in pain or inflammation. PEA, I think, is over 27 clinical studies, and it's really well proven. It modulates and assists anandamide in binding to CB receptors. It may not bind to them itself, but it does promote the endogenous binding by anandamide. It reduces inflammation caused by glial and mast cells. This is critical for reducing brain inflammation and is a key reason why PEA is being looked at not only in Alzheimer's disease, but also in depression. Regulates the activation and differentiation and effector function of inflammatory T cells via inhibition of NF-kappa B. But its big effect is it acts as a significant agonist for nuclear receptor peroxisome proliferator activated receptors. Okay, what are these things, these PPARs? Well, these PPARs, these are critical to the production of pain and inflammation. So what we know is that PPAR agonists show benefit in chronic pain models, inflammation, prevention of neurodegeneration, lipid modulation, insulin resistant, and weight management. So all of these things are influenced by the cascade of effects that happen when these PPARs are activated. PEA, OEA, they activate PPAR. So again, on this illustration here, you can see that PEA and OEA, they can get broken down by FAAH, but ideally they get into the to the nucleus and act as an agonist to these PPAR receptors, and that is really responsible for its overall effect. PEA exerts a true entourage effect via transient receptor potential cation channels. What the heck are those? These are seen to be opened when you take echinacea or you have capsaicin, ginger, Szechuan pepper. It's that burning vanillamide type reaction, and in doing so, this addresses some well-established mechanisms that play a key role in chronic pain, cognitive decline, and depression. PEA, I think, as I said earlier, I think it's going to emerge as the real alternative to CBD. I think when we take a look at the CBD research, it's not all that good, but the research on PEA is generally very good. Over 20 clinical studies ranging from 20 to 636 patients, 14 days to 120 days. Dosage is reasonable at 300 to 1,200 milligrams daily. positive results in low back pain, sciatic pain, osteoarthritis, fibromyalgia, peripheral neuropathies, neuropathic pain related to stroke and multiple sclerosis, chronic pelvic and vaginal pain, post-herpetic neuralgia. Also been shown to be effective is in depression. In medical research, we like to take a look at what's called numbers needed to treat. In the treatment of low back pain or sciatica, the number needed to treat to reduce pain by 50% with PEA is 1.5 dose. Ibuprofen 400 milligrams, 2.8. You have to treat 2.8 people to see a benefit. Acetaminophen is 5. Codeine is 18. So you can see that the number needed to treat is much better than anything else that's out there, and this is due to these unique analgesic effects of PEA, and as I said earlier, it also acts to enhance the effects of anandamide and also 2-AG. I want to talk about some of the naturally occurring compounds that also work on the endocannabinoid system that don't come from cannabis. I got a picture here of echinacea. And echinacea, the alkamides, those compounds that cause the tingling sensation, these activate those TTAR receptors, and these are really some of the key compounds in echinacea that do enhance the immune system, but more importantly, they activate the endogenous ligands and can bind to help them bind to those CB receptors. We've seen a lot of improvements in herbal medicines over the years. These improvements have been largely a result of improved analytical techniques, isolation techniques, cultivation, extraction techniques, as well as improved pharmacological knowledge. I was a big proponent in the early 80s about using high quality standardized extracts. It allows for accurate dosages, provides greater clinical reliability, and they weren't isolated medicines. This is really important when we take a look at cannabis, because this has to be what I think has to take place when we're starting to look at some of these crude cannabis extracts out there. They should be standardized for not only CBD, but other compounds. These terpenes and other compounds are really important for the overall effects. So we need to analyze cannabis like any plant and have a better understanding of what the active components are and how do we standardize it for maximum benefit. So I'm just going to quickly go through these, because I think that these quality control steps are they're really necessary in the production of a high quality CBD product, or even cannabis product, a THC based cannabis product. So we haven't answered the question yet: what is the most ideal non-THC based cannabis extract, and what is the best THC included cannabis extract? There's a lot of questions that we don't know. These are just some of the standardized extracts that really emerged in the 80s: valerian, ginkgo, milk thistle, saw palmetto, and St. John's wort. The key thing is that you take a look at a substance like St. John's wort extract. The product was standardized at 0.3% hypericin, 0.3%. Hypericin was never thought to be the active ingredient. What it was a good marker for the overall quality of the extract. So 99.7% of the extract contain other compounds. That's how we have to think about cannabis, because there are other compounds in cannabis that are non-cannabinoids, not THC, not CBD, that have merit. What we've learned over the years is that there are limitations of pharmacological knowledge. When I first started studying medicine, the prostaglandin system was just getting going, and so initially it was focused on drugs that can influence the prostaglandin system. And then once we started learning more and more about the prostaglandin system, we realized, boy, holy cow! You know what? We don't need drugs to influence that system. We can influence the prostaglandin system by changing the diet, getting rid of compounds that promote inflammation and inflammatory eicosanoids, and then at the same time flooding the body with those fats that help reduce inflammation and reduce the formation of these inflammatory compounds. I think that's the key, and that's what will happen with the endocannabinoid system. The more that we learn about it, the less we're going to think of using a cannabis-based approach. My prediction is that with better understanding, we're going to be right back to using food as medicine. Another thing about pharmacological knowledge is that it's always evolving. And now we're having to take into consideration what's going on in the microbiome. Keep in mind that with botanical compounds, there's a pleiotropic effect, meaning that these compounds tend to work on multiple systems, influence not only the endocannabinoid system, but prostaglandin formation. They work on other enzyme systems, and DGL is a great example. I like to remind people of. DGL is a special licorice extract. The very first drug that was shown to be effective in the treatment of peptic ulcers was a derivative of licorice called carbenoxolone, and it's basically glycerotinic acid. And so they would isolate glycerotinic acid, make a modification of it, and that became carbenoxolone. And that was the first substance shown in a double-blind study to be effective in the treatment of peptic ulcer. The problem is that this compound caused side effects. Most people experience hypertension, so they said, "Well, geez, okay, that didn't work out so well." And when they were doing some of the initial clinical work, they compared the pure compound from what they used to discard, and they found that what they used to discard was very effective. So then they started looking at the deglycerinated licorice, and they found that it was more effective than the isolated carbenoxolone. So the compound that they used to think was the active ingredient turned out to be not the active ingredient. There are other compounds in the plant that were responsible for its effects in peptic ulcer. And now we know what those compounds are and how they work. And, so DGL is a great example in that sometimes what we think is the mechanism of action may not be the true mechanism of action. I also believe that there's a wisdom in the body, and the body will respond differently based upon what it needs to the same plant, based upon what's going on in the body at any particular time. I want to talk briefly about cannabis sativa, and it has a very complex phytochemistry. Over 520 different compounds have been identified, over 2,000 in smoke. Smoking marijuana is much different than taking it orally. Heating leads to decarboxylation of the cannabinoids. That means activation and the formation of even more unique compounds. Key cannabinoids, THC, CBD, CBC, and more than 150 other cannabinoids. And we're learning that many of these different cannabinoids have different effects. Terpenoids, I mentioned those earlier. The complex as well as the monoterpenes play a huge role in the overall effectiveness of cannabis. I believe that with all my heart. I know these compounds, I know how they work, and you're never going to see the same sort of results with pure THC or pure CBD that you would with a high-grade cannabis product that is full of terpenoids and flavonoids and other compounds. There's a tremendous individual response to the major cannabinoids, THC and CBD. Is the entourage effect real? Okay, this entourage effect has been distorted a little bit. The entourage effect is really talking about compounds that facilitate the effects of THC. What marketers of CBD-based products are saying is, oh, well, okay, we have CBD and the full entourage. Well, if you don't have THC in the product, you're not going to have an entourage effect. That's the bottom line. So THC is a critical component for that entourage effect to be displayed. What does an ideal cannabis preparation look like? We don't know yet. There hasn't been enough research. We don't know enough about it, but I have no doubt that crude preparations that are standardized, not only for the cannabinoids, but also the terpenes and flavonoids are going to be more effective than those that don't have that degree of standardization. Let's talk about the clinical pharmacology. There's no question that medical marijuana is more effective than THC. It works. Empirical experience trumps clinical trials, especially in pain management. Supportive phytochemicals influence the action and half-life of the THC. That's that entourage effects. We have clinical documentation in cancer, helping with an anti-emetic effect and an appetite stimulation. We have it for anxiety and sleep, although we'll have some caveats there in just a minute. It can be helpful in chronic pain, AIDS, sensory neuropathy, glaucoma, and a few other things. What about CBD? Popular, everybody's, and the reason why is that I tell the truth. The existing clinical research for CBD is very weak. If we look at the benefits in epilepsy, there have been some studies that were done on more crude preparations. They didn't show any greater efficacy than the studies with CBD alone. Yeah, CBD alone has been shown to be effective for some rare forms of epilepsy, but the dosage used, we're talking about 1 or 2 grams a day, not 5 or 10 or 15, 25, 50 milligrams of CBD. The therapeutic efficacy of any drug or any natural product or therapeutic agent is delivering an effective dose. The bottom line is that the typical dosage recommendation of CBD-based products on the market right now is woefully deficient to produce a pharmacological effect. We know this based on studies with anxiety, and I'll go into those. Insomnia. One thing to keep in mind, marijuana and presumably these CBD preparations, if you take enough of them, will reduce dreams, and they will interfere with normal sleep processes. So I don't really think of THC as being an ideal sleep promoting agent. I really don't. As far as pain goes, THC definitely reduces pain. The CBD, there are issues, and I'll talk about each of those issues. The first one is the absorption of CBD is extremely poor and is quickly metabolized. Is the first pass happens very quickly. So oral preparations, I'm not sure that effective. Maybe buccal sprays or keeping it in the mouth longer, that might help. Vaping it seems to be a lot different. I do think that the extracts are more effective than the purified. CBD, there's a lot of questions, legal, prescription effect, why no funding of research? Supposedly, this year there's been over $1 billion in sales, and yet we've seen no significant investment in research by these people that are making millions and millions of dollars on CBD. Let's take a look at some of the clinical pharmacology a little bit closer. Epilepsy. The dosage is quite high. Take a look at the number needed to treat for one person to achieve a 50% reduction in seizures is 8. The number needed to treat for one person to achieve complete seizure freedom is 171. So you have to treat 8 people to see at a dose of 5 to 10 milligrams per kilogram body weight twice a day. That translates to about 1 or 2 grams a day to reduce the seizures by 50%, and you have to treat 8 people before you see that effect. So that's not a very good numbers needed to treat. The reason why it was approved is that there's no drug that shows any better. So that little improvement is better than nothing, and that's why it was given orphan drug status. There is some benefit in the treatment of anxiety in low-quality studies. Latest study showed better results with 300 milligrams compared to 150 or 600 milligrams. Again, we don't have enough clinical pharmacology data to know what the right dosage is, but it may be that it's a bell-shaped curve, and you got to hit that curve right on target. Sleep, a small pilot study showed 160 milligrams at bedtime increased sleep time but reduced dream recall. I think dream recall is really important. 160 milligrams, that was the dose. Again, that's far greater than what you typically see recommended for CBD. And as I said earlier, no clinical studies to date in the treatment of pain. It may have some benefits there, but I think it's it's going to, when it does show benefit, it's going to be less effective than PEA. Remember, the number needed to treat in low back pain to show a 50% reduction in pain was 1.5. You only need to treat 1.5 patients to see that effect. That was better than acetaminophen. That was better than ibuprofen. That was even better than codeine. So it was all good. This was the study that was published in the Brazilian Journal of Psychiatry just this year. Not a great study, but again, it raises the question: is dosage? Does it have to be right on to see the best results? Too little, no results. Too much, no results. That appears to be the case. So this shows the difference between the different dosages, and you can see that the 300 milligram produced the overall the best reduction in feelings of anxiety. CBD concerns poor quality control in many commercial products. CBD at greater than 20 milligrams per kilogram body weight may cause side effects. Nobody's getting that dosage right now, so I'm not too worried about it. CBD may worsen symptoms of Parkinson's disease. It can increase blood levels of anti-epileptic drugs. It may increase warfarin levels and increase INR levels, so just keep that in mind. I work with a company, Emerald Health. We developed a whole line of products that support the endocannabinoid system with non-cannabis compounds. In addition to those, to a kind of a base formulation of compounds that we call phytocan, I put in each formula a hero ingredient that had good clinical documentation. So we know we're going to see the clinical benefits highlighted because of the appropriate hero ingredient. I don't want to go into each of these products, but I just want to highlight that these compounds in the phytocan complex, these are common herbs and spices, peony root, clove, echinacea, ginger, magnolia, and xanthoxylin or Szechuan pepper. I want to briefly mention that ginger root extracts and powder, this is a powerful medicine. Fresh ginger or taking a ginger extract. I think, when you're talking about pain and inflammation, there have been over 100 double-blind placebo-controlled studies with echinacea and ginger and these other natural compounds. Ginger in particular, over 100 double-blind studies showing it to be effective in reducing pain and inflammation due to a variety of different causes. So these compounds definitely work on they're kind of activators of the endocannabinoid system. Although as we learn more, we see that they act more effectively on some of the downstream mechanisms than even binding to CB1 or CB2 receptors will produce. I just wanted to introduce these concepts to you. I believe that it's a look into the future. I wanted to provide some provocative concepts, and with the goal of producing better clinical outcomes. It starts with food, starts with lifestyle, it starts with attitude. Support that endocannabinoid system from a global perspective. Then we can dial it in with some specific supplements. So I hope that's all useful information. And what I'd like to do right now is just open the floor up to answer any of your questions.
All right, great. Thank you, Dr. Murray. That was very interesting. So in your presentation, you're saying that the CBD is actually would actually be enhancing these phytocompounds. So you're adding the phytocompounds with the CBD is making a better product or a better solution to the different treatments?
No, there's no CBD, there's no cannabis, there's no cannabinoids in the products from Emerald. I don't think you need cannabis to activate the endocannabinoid system. The endocannabinoid system existed prior to the plant. We have an endogenous system. We have ligands that we produce that bind to those receptors. That's how the system's designed to work. It's kind of like, comparing the GABA system, how we can enhance the GABAergic system without using, Valium. We can certainly influence the GABA system without using Valium. And I think right now we're just kind of kind of bastardizing the system and how to influence it by relying so much on CBD. I don't think it's necessary. I think you can get there via a different path.
Right. We have a lot of support for these other phyto compounds. Are there any?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, so on to another question. Are there any populations that you would not use these cannabinoids in?
When they're saying these cannabinoids, are they talking about the product line from Emerald, or are they talking about what are they talking about? What do they mean by these cannabinoids?
I think it's like the anandamide, the CBD, the different.
Well, anandamide is something that we produce. Yeah, anandamide is something that we produce naturally. PEA is that's something we can take as a dietary supplement, and there's no, as far as I know, there's no contraindications to PEA.
Okay, and the CBD in epilepsy, is that so in that case, would that be for all populations? Would anybody that has epilepsy benefit from that, or are there populations of epileptics that may not respond? Is that kind of a blanket?
Well, yeah. Let's be clear about epilepsy. CBD is shown to be effective in very rare forms of epilepsy called Dravet's syndrome. This is characterized by severe multiple seizures on a daily basis, intractable seizures, and it has shown some benefit. But even then, the number needed to treat is very high. To see complete resolution, it only happens 1 out of nearly every 200 people that are given it. And to see any sort of significant benefit, it's only about 1 out of 8 people. You have to treat 8 people to show 1 person displaying benefit. So even though that there's a lot of popularity and promotion of CBD right now based upon its approval as an anti-epileptic, you have to keep things in context. It's not that effective.
Okay. So we've got a question about edibles. Is anything that you talked about today have anything to do with edibles in treating? Edibles
refer to medical marijuana, and I highlighted that I think there is some benefit. We have more empirical evidence with medical marijuana than we do clinical evidence, and there's no question that it provides benefits in pain and as I said earlier, in sleep, with some caveats. It does increase sleep time and reduce dream recall, yeah, it definitely has its place in medicine for sure.
You had talked about, briefly talked about the absorption, and I think you mentioned a spray to help.
What?
I think you mentioned a spray to help with absorption, some type of, is it, I think it was.
Oh, yes. For CBD, it's very, very poorly absorbed. So taking it orally, you're only going to absorb about 6%. Sativex, which was a crude cannabis-based drug developed by GW Pharma, that was administered as a buccal spray in the mouth. Sublingual, those may have some advantages. Vaping, I think you can make a stronger case for CBD being vaped than you can taking it orally.
Oh, interesting. Okay. You had mentioned several times about dream recall, about this inhibiting dream recall. Can you maybe talk briefly, very briefly, on why dream recall is so important?
I think it's important. Voltaire said, "Any dream unexamined uh, is a gift thrown away." We really, I think, can learn a lot from taking a look at our dreams. So I think they're an important communication from our subconscious mind that we can grow and learn from. So I'm not a big fan of anything that interferes with dreaming or with dream recall.
Okay, great. And we're not getting a whole lot of questions in today. I think this is a very new topic for most people, and I think our listeners are primarily just trying to understand these new concepts and these new compounds and how they're working and how they would work in a therapeutic approach. So
I can see the chat. I see the question. I can see the question like, what's the advice for children with chronic lung problems? I don't know why you'd want to give edibles to a 7-year-old who's hospitalized. It's just, I'm not sure that that's the right support. I don't know why they have chronic lung problems, but usually with chronic lung problems, I would equate it to either lack of natural host defense factors, maybe they're low glutathione levels in the lungs. Focusing on the natural ways to boost lung glutathione levels would be important. Also, the use of mucolytics, compounds that break down mucus and promote expectoration of a thicker mucus that can help reduce lung infections. I don't know why marijuana is not going to be useful for helping a child with chronic lung problems. So I don't know why we'd want to give them edibles.
Right. Yeah. It's not really a compound that would be used in lungs, would it? Or be effective towards the respiratory?
No, especially in a 7-year-old. There's other things that you need to take a look at in chronic lung issues.
All right, great. And let's see, standardized formulas. We're looking for something that are these things. This is such a new area. I think there's a lot of just a lot of questions that are kind of not really making a lot of sense right now for me. But are these formulas, these standardized formulas that you talked about, are they like on the market now, or are they just being used in research and clinical trials? Or what's the availability of these standardized products? I know you had mentioned these products.
There are no standardized products. When you're talking about standardized cannabis,
mm-hmm.
There are no standardized products.
There's not. So you had mentioned,
but that's what needs to happen, because with cannabis there's variation in these key compounds beyond the cannabinoids, the terpenoids, the flavonoids, the polyphenols. You're going to get different results every time you administer it. So and then we also know that one person's response is different from another. So as we start looking at the pharmacology of cannabis, there has to be a look at its phytochemistry. And I think standardized cannabis extracts will be a big part of the future of cannabis.
Okay. So right now it's more just going on in trials, and it's not really available.
It's not even going on in trials. It's not even going on in trials.
Oh, okay. But we need more trials.
They need to start looking at compounds beyond cannabis, or beyond THC and CBD, because those other compounds contribute to the overall pharmacology. That's why I gave the example of St. John's wort. Even though we standardize it at 0.3%, we get a picture of what the whole plant looks like. Mm-hmm. We're not getting a picture of what the whole plant looks like with cannabis right now, because it's not how it's being used. But I think that's the future of cannabis research.
So from your clinical use. Yeah. So from your perspective, can you look into the future and see that the research, now that it's been legalized in so many states, will the research actually start happening, and what needs to happen for that to begin?
Well, I don't think the CBD people want research, because I'm not sure that. they're selling it a lot. They're not having to spend any money really doing any clinical studies. They're just spend money making claims and marketing it and creating a kind of a hysteria and a mass, I think, placebo response.
Yeah.
I just don't. I think when we look at the pharmacology, which includes the absorption, that we're not going to. It's very unlikely we're going to see the benefits that are being linked to CBD pan out in double-blind, placebo-controlled studies.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting because so many people I know benefit from, just historically benefit from the use of it, but and for so many different ailments.
Okay, I want to differentiate that. I mentioned the entourage effect requiring THC. There's a big difference between cannabis with THC and cannabis without THC. And I'm not saying that all there's just even a very small percentage of THC may be all that's necessary to produce a desired clinical response in some of these conditions. But when that THC is not there, I don't think you can, which is basically what you see with these CBD-based products. I'm not sure you're going to see much of a benefit at all.
Okay. Interesting. It sounds like we've got a long way to go.
Yeah, but it's not really. I mean, there's so much research being done. We just gotta get the studies done on what these commercially available products are.
Right. Figure it out, make sense of it.
Yeah, I know that for example, when we look at that phytocan complex that we use is our base in our product line. In our in vitro studies that we haven't published the results yet, but when we look at the variety of different markers of cannabinoid activity, it far exceeds overall the effects that you'd see with CBD. So I think that in the future, as we gain more understanding, we're going to be utilizing these non-cannabis compounds. And many of those have great effects. Magnolia bark extract for anxiety, ginger for inflammation, echinacea for anxiety. These are all related to endocannabinoid activity as well as other activity, and we have good clinical data on those applications.
Right. That's what I was just thinking. Excellent. Well, that was very interesting, food for thought, and I really appreciate you bringing this endocannabinoid system to our attention. And interesting to know that there are so many therapeutic plants and herbs and spices that we are already very familiar with that contain those endocannabinoids naturally.
Yep, there you go. You got the point. That was the whole point of the presentation. Yeah. It was a great pleasure. I hope people enjoyed it, and I look forward to doing another one of these on a different topic.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Murray, for joining us today. We appreciate your work and all that you do for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. Thank you for joining us. Please mark your calendars for January 10th, and we will look forward to seeing you for another great webinar presentation. Have a wonderful afternoon, everybody.